Hey friends, welcome back. This is part 2 of our podcast series that is based on a live seminar we did where we had a panel of female leaders come in and talk about their experiences in leadership. So join us as we consider more questions in this episode. All right, what's the most helpful thing, apart from sharing the gospel, we're holding that as helpful, what's the most helpful thing, apart from sharing the gospel, that the church has done to prepare you to be a female leader?
There was a chuckle, so I don't
know. No, I was like, does the church lady answer that first? And then I looked at Kaelyn, should the church ladies? Yeah, okay, go ahead.
I'll take the lead. The phrase, I'm okay in Jesus, is something that is said at Hope a lot, and I actually think is applicable here. And just for me, what that means is the finished work that Christ has done on the cross is the answer for any performance question that happens for me at work. And that I'm okay in Jesus. I can trust God with the outcomes. So I can put my best out there and, hope that it is enough, but ultimately trust that at the end of the day that my eternal reality is answered by Christ. And so that's something that the gospel is very real in how I show up at work. It doesn't mean there aren't times where I don't live out of that. For those of you who are Enneagram followers, I'm a 3, which means I'm an achiever or performer. I'd also say I'm a recovering perfectionist. And so that is not always how I show up. And it's easy to kind of fall back into that desire to control the outcome. But one of the books that I actually have enjoyed is Daring Greatly by Brene Brown. And there's so much goodness in that book that I enjoy, but one particular story is about when Brene is talking with her daughter, I think about a swim meet, and her daughter just does not want to go and is even considering quitting the team. And she encourages her to kind of reframe what success looks like as just showing up and getting wet. It's not about winning the race. It's not about doing it perfectly. It's just about hopping in the pool, and that's what success looks like. And so there are times when the voice of I'm okay in Jesus, when that feels quiet, sometimes it's easier for me to think about God talking to me and just saying, just show up and get wet, Elise. And it's often something that my husband and I will say to each other too as we talk about going through work things.
I think, because I'm a woman, I like to start with I think.
Thank you. Now I feel less threatened by you as a human.
I like it, and I don't mind saying that. I think that one of the things that the church has done to help prepare me be a leader is give me opportunities to be a leader, even when I'm not ready. I'm not ready to fly the coop. I maybe don't have a whole lot of training, but in college I was part of InterVarsity, and you need student leaders to lead the small groups, and so I'm like, I was just in a small group for the first time, and now I'm leading a small group. And same, at Hope. If you want to be a leader, there are opportunities and spaces for you to be a leader. If God has called you to be a leader in some way, shape, and form, we make it happen, and you may not be ready for that. You might learn on the fly and learn as you go. But that's the best way to learn how to be a leader, as opposed to maybe in 5th grade when you're trying to vie for student body president and you have to promise them that you're going to put a trampoline in the gym floor in order to get that leadership role. It's very different at the church, where leadership is desired of everybody in some way, shape, or form, and that opportunity exists. And please don't wait till you're ready to do it.
Modeling women's leadership, I think is incredibly invaluable, right? To see someone who's gone before me, and to show me I can do it. And of course, the coaching and mentoring and discipleship that Hope provides to women is so invaluable.
I was just about to say, I think. Oh, gosh. Having conversations like these, like that we're having tonight, I think is, now I'm going to hear it every time, Naty.
I'm sorry. I think I'm sorry.
I think these are very helpful conversations to have because they're not had in many other spheres. The church, and specifically Hope, when I'm saying the church, really embodies the truth that we're all level at the foot of the cross, and God has given both men and women certain roles in the church and at home. And there isn't one gender above the other. We all reflect him in unique and specific ways. And so I'm very thankful that Hope kind of walks that walk in providing a space to, play out our gender roles.
The first thing I wrote down is just having mentors and coaches around me, both male and female, people who have taken a lot of time to pour into me and look at me and see me uniquely and not dismiss me because I kind of came into Christianity midway through my college experience. I grew up in a home that my mom made more money than my dad. Her job kept her busy, or I had more time with my dad. And so we already had this, spirit about me. And it wasn't rejected as unholy or something that maybe a lot of stereotypes I would have put on the church. Hope was really the first church I significantly got involved with. So it's really besides when my parents used to make me go to church growing up, it's my first real church experience that I owned. And so my experience has been here, though now having been in the biz for a while, I understand kind of some other church cultures just by story. But it's just really uniquely, Steve always saw great things in me, Steve Streichler. He made time to have conversations with me when I was kind of a young, dumb leader. He would gently correct and offer ways to help me along. And there's another woman at Hope who was a little bit ahead of me in life and ministry and really took time for me. And then having peers, and we were learning and growing together and being treated as just as valuable. Cor and I were friends in college and kind of have grown up in ministry together and being treated as just as valuable as a male counterpart was always really, really felt affirming and here's his unique gifts, here's your unique gifts. How can you, be in ministry in a way that complements each other? So it's been really exciting to be a part of, really truly caring about me as a human being and developing me for the unique way God created me.
In what ways have you faced feeling isolated or alone in your path, and kind of how have you worked through it?
I think I'm going to go first because I'm the oldest, right? This is where I'm we should have my mom here because she was also in the business world as a woman, is 30 years older than me. And so I'm sure she would have considerable stories to tell that I've never experienced. So I just, shout out to all the ladies who have gone before us. But for me, when I got hired, I felt like there wasn't anyone else on our staff team who had a similar role to me, and it took years before there was even another woman who was working as many hours as me. I think I'm trying to think of who that would have been.
Rachel Larson.
Yeah, maybe. She probably, I don't know. She employment history here. Click on this. No. And so I feel like I did in many ways feel alone and isolated in the uniqueness of my role, not necessarily isolated relationally. But there were some things, that do isolate you, like if the guys had a trip or something, I wouldn't necessarily go along with, but I do remember the first trip that I got invited on, and it was hugely impactful to do that and be a part of what was happening. But it still feels a little bit weird, because they're going back to the hotel rooms they share or whatever, and I'm like, oh, I'm Naty, is sitting alone. You know what I mean? And so it's just in some ways it was isolating in that sense, but not intentionally. And then just even I'm trying to think if I'm supposed to answer it here. Yeah, I am. I was able then to come to the guys with these concerns and some of the peers around me, and it was just really great to see how that was received. The level of understanding and listening that happened in those moments when I could articulate that, and I think that's a really special environment. So if you're a man and you're listening to this and you're like, well, what if a woman comes to me with a concern? I think it's really easy to become threatened or defensive. I didn't do that, or I didn't mean to do that. You probably didn't. I think most people in the church or out there, hopefully well-intentioned. I'm gonna give people the benefit of the doubt, and you guys can tell me if I shouldn't do that. But it's still, things happen, and the guys have just been really supportive and wanting to listen and have really advocated for me and had my back in situations too where people kind of, I don't know, can we say got your undies in a bunch about my role at Hope.
You did say menstruation, so.
So, yeah,
All
no,
bets are off.
all right. And so it's been just a really cool thing for me to be a part of watching that happen, because amidst my own struggle, I had partners in it who were alongside me, who really wanted to partner with me in a predominantly male work crew at the time. So.
When I was really early in my career, it was pretty lonesome to be a young woman in leadership, where I was, my co-leaders were of a different era, a different age, and so we didn't really have much in common, and the people that I was leading were 20, 30 years older than me, and so I didn't really have, who do I go to with some of the concerns? And of course you feel like there's imposter syndrome, right? You feel like everyone's talking behind your back, and turns out that they were. And I think one of the biggest lessons I learned in that time of just feeling isolated or alone is, if people have a hard time with women in leadership, especially young women in leadership, it's usually a you problem and not a me problem. And just relying on, my identity isn't in how people see me here at work, and I can do my best work and people can still see me the wrong way. I think that's just, it's always going to be lonely and isolating when you're a woman in leadership. But I think finding the people that you can have as trusted voices. I've been listening to the podcast.
Yes.
Find those trusted voices, and those times when you do need a fellow leader to come and kind of give you a shot in the arm and remind you, that's a them problem, that's a you problem, not a me problem. And then you can just kind of hold fast to who you are outside of what people think of you.
I've really struggled with when I feel like I'm being treated differently on a routine basis than my male counterparts. And just for context, I'm the only female resident in my class, that I don't feel like there's anybody who will really understand. And so I just kind of internalize it and I don't talk to anyone about it, or at least I don't talk to anyone who can make a positive change in my work environment. And that's something that I'm still struggling through and working on, because that's just a confidence thing. I know that I'd be received better than I am imagining, but I guess I don't believe that they'll have the capacity to understand why it matters to me and how to make a difference. So I need to give them a little bit more grace in that regard and allow them to be part of that journey with me as a class. But what helps me a lot is just, even if I don't feel comfortable bringing it up at work, is to talk about it with the men in my life that I really do trust and value, and that's like my husband and my father, and they've been very, very helpful in helping me realize that if they were in that role, like, what would they tell me? And it's totally different than what I'm imagining. And so, yeah, totally overthinking things is a big problem for me. And I think part of growing in your leadership is learning it's kind of a trust walk to give people the benefit of the doubt and let them into that struggle as being a woman leader.
I wrote that too. When you said that, I was like, oh yeah. I wrote that I had needs, but early on I didn't articulate it because I had fear about how it would be received. And I think, that's understandable given the cultural context that we live in. People don't take criticism easily, or don't take, if we say something that's hard for us, that people don't always, it's a blame, deny, defend reaction, and then it's hard. And so I didn't initially articulate what I was thinking or feeling because I didn't have anything. And it's very interesting to go to church where you work. Because maybe places where you would go to escape your work environment, like church, and I'm gonna really connect with God here. And I do connect with God here, but it's a unique situation. And so I always feel like nobody gets me. I get this big, as if other women can't relate to that. And when I did start opening up to both women and men, I can say I wasn't internalizing it anymore. And one, it kind of right-sized some of my thinking that it can get. Believe it or not, I can get hyperbolic sometimes, and right-sized my thinking, and was able to then have kind of perspective put on it, but also just feel heard and understood.
I would echo what Martha said with having voices in your life who are meant to be able to kind of encourage you along. I know I rely on my husband a lot for that as a voice. We have similar educational backgrounds and work in similar roles. So although our industries are different, there's a lot of sharing that we can do with one another, and that has been really encouraging. I think I also, when I first was reflecting on this question, also felt very grateful that while I work in a traditionally male-dominated industry, I haven't actually felt incredibly isolated or alone, because there are examples of women who are 5 and 10 years ahead of me that were generous with their time and willing to mentor me and answer my questions, or just, seeing the way that they did life and worked together was really powerful for me.
This was initially a hard question for me because I was like, I haven't felt alone. And then I started questioning, have I? Like, I doubted myself because that's what I do. And then this is the one I brought to Paul and Naty, and they were like, just say it, like your story. So I haven't felt alone because women like Naty, specifically at Hope, who have really paved the way. She's been in the room for tough conversations, and has also, when I was in my last year at LDI, invited me to a lot of things to see what just mentorship is like. And so she has really opened herself into developing younger leaders, and has just set a really good example for that. That has allowed myself, and then I imagine many other women that she has influenced just to not feel alone.
Thanks. I
You're
think maybe.
welcome.
Thank you. Sorry.
What does it look like for women to support other women? We've kind of touched on it, but I'd love to hear more.
Yeah, so I am going to kind of speak to more the career side of things. I'd say be intentional with seeking out other women that are at every stage of their career. Seek out women that are newer to their career than you. Find out how you can advocate for them, how you can support them. Take them out for coffee, go for a walk. Figure out who might be a good mentor for them. Maybe that's you, maybe that's someone else. Just invest in other women, and it's okay to be awkward about it. I think that's that's how we have community, right? We just have to take risk and say, hey, I'd love to just chat, and do the same with people that are further along in their career. Just ask them for their sage advice. What barriers have you come across? What barriers are you experiencing now? How can I get to where you are? Will you mentor me? Will you take an investment in me? And then find those people that are kind of at your same level, and find people that you can confide in and figure out how they've maneuvered things better or worse. I think being a woman in the workplace, but a woman in leadership, is really a master class in managing up and influencing horizontally. And you just have to take risks and advocate for yourself more than probably men do in this instance. There's usually formalized programs and mentorships and all those kinds of things, and women kind of have to forge their own path with it. And I would say don't apologize, just do it.
I think it's funny that I start to think that maybe I'm the only one that experiences the internal struggles of a woman leader, and maybe the other women in my sphere don't, and they've just kind of got it all figured out, and they're just confident, but they're probably holding a lot of the same questions and doubts inside just as much as I am. So I think just asking the other women who are part of your life circles questions about how they're doing, and about what their goals are, and about what ways they're looking for support, because so much of that comes out when you're just like asking more questions about how are things going. You might actually open up the vault to hear, whoa, that's a lot more information than I was expecting. But that's a really good way to figure out in what way somebody wants support. And then of course, it sounds very cliche, but we should pray for each other. We really, really should. And pray for ourselves. Is kind of a breakthrough I've had more recently, because I've really struggled with anxiety in my career as I'm struggling through busy work days, lack of sleep, studying. And more recently, when some circumstance comes up and I'm really worried about it, I usually just am spending all my time figuring out like all the ways I'm going to fix that situation. But I don't know, maybe 3 months ago, it suddenly dawned on me that I should just pray to God and ask for help. And that has been in the form of, one, God, either fix the situation, or two, help calm my anxiety and help me not to be afraid, because I know you're going to take care of me in the situation, whatever it is. And if you want me in this role, you're going to make it happen. And one, he has been calming my anxiety like crazy, which is just like the biggest answer to prayer to begin with. But then two, he also fixes the problem. And this has happened time and time again. So it's just been, I think, something I've undervalued in my professional career is just, even if it's not someone that I have a faith relationship with, like knowing their struggle and praying for them means a lot for my own growth, and actually does make a difference in their life too.
There is something about praying for somebody else that takes our lens off ourselves too. You know, like we can kind of think outside of ourselves, maybe get back to that frontal lobe a little bit. But I know that if I had to take a scalpel to somebody's eyeball, I would pray a lot. So although we looked at each other like, oh, we didn't write prayer, and you work at a church. Oh, dang it. I wrote notice each other. Notice each other. I think women are often pitted against each other. You know, like we're taught to compare ourselves in so many different ways. How do you look? Who's the smartest in the room? Who's the funniest? Who's the whatever we value or whatever we don't value? We're still comparing ourselves to other people, and I try to counteract that by noticing other people and seeing the uniqueness in them and seeing what's really great about them and seeing the unique way God has wired them, the things that make them special. And so that's been a huge thing for me, just trying to see the uniqueness of other women and see where their unique gifting can lead them. I did write some of the same things, mentors and coaches, and we, as women, we can maybe feel a competition for limited roles or limited spaces sometimes. So how do we encourage each other to even step into roles that we might not take, and be bold in doing that, and really again advocate for each other, but also encourage each other to not pit ourselves against each other. Which, if you're a woman, you get what I mean, and guys, that probably is a thing too, right? Sort of some internal pecking order or whatever that walk in a room. Yeah.
I probably should speak.
Who can deadlift the most?
It's an audio podcast.
Something like that.
Yeah, instantly sizing up deadlift potential.
Deadlift potential. All right.
Who would win in a fight? Who could solve equations on a glass window, like in A Beautiful Mind?
Oh yeah.
But, all right.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Naty, because we have to fight the inherent scarcity mindset as women, because instead of like trying to intentionally celebrate each other and say, your win is my win, and how do I not tear you down? How do I say there's enough to go around is very hard as a woman. So just intentionally counteracting that.
They're only going to pick one woman for this team. I got to be her.
Yeah.
Yeah, that can be that scarcity mindset. That's a good way to put it.
I don't have, you guys said a lot of what I have down. I said just acknowledge and affirm people's feelings or women's feelings when they bring it to your attention. I really liked what you said about, I can't remember which one of you over there said asking questions, because then it will open up even just more things that might be going on. And then when you ask that question, actually listen to them, and you don't need to provide a solution, but more just be an ear and one that can empathize. And then if you have the opportunity to enter into the tough conversations for the future of other women that might be coming into the organization.
I would say that my answers were also similarly themed and kind of dovetailed nicely with that. First is just kind of this idea that leaders are not born, they're made. And so this idea of coaching and mentorship and learning from one another is a theme that you've heard, I think, across the board, and that is why. And so kind of continue to do that for one another. And then on that theme of how can we advocate for one another, I recently had just a really powerful example. I started a new role about 4 months ago, and when I accepted the role, found out within a few days that I was pregnant and was going to be going out on maternity leave before I had 1 year in my role. And I think as somebody who likes the idea of starting a new role, hitting the ground running, coming up to speed quickly and making this contribution, I was already anticipating, okay, I'm going to have to do that really fast before I'm going to be out on maternity leave. And so I waited kind of to have the conversation with my manager about this until I felt comfortable, or not the first day, but kind of within the early days. And the conversation was very positive, and it was just very interesting because at the time there was also some structural changes about our team and how it would operate, and adding more people and adding more responsibility, either with my role or my colleague's role. And that conversation was happening right around the time when I shared the news of my upcoming leave. And so in the back of my mind, I was thinking, oh my goodness, this feels like an obvious answer. I'm going to have this maternity leave disruption. This will clearly kind of not necessarily go my way because it's wildly inconvenient. But my manager ended up saying, like, no, this is something that's a short-term moment and your long tenure with the team, and it makes the most sense for the work to be with you. And so was willing to kind of partner with me to work through that. And it was just a very big moment of seeing that manager advocate for me in a way that I wasn't expecting.
Well, that wraps up our conversation for today, but we want to keep connecting with you. So thank you for listening to the podcast. And if you like what you heard, be sure to follow our show and leave a review. We love connecting with our listeners. So if you have questions, comments, or topic ideas, please email us ldi@hopecc.com. LDI is a ministry of Hope Community Church based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We seek to develop leaders in their biblical thinking, Christ-like character, and ministry skills for service both inside and outside the church. We do this through internships, classes, seminars, and retreats. If you're interested in learning more about our internships or other opportunities, visit ldi.hopecc.com or email ldi@hopecc.com. Have a great week.